I'm looking forward to digging in. I love this project. I love what you're doing. So it's
Thank
an
you so
honor.
much.
Thank
I
you
really
so much for
appreciate
taking
that.
a minute. So before we get into it, we're going to hop from one calamity to another that was a little bit more in our avenue that spurned a lot of creative things to happen. Living through the pandemic 5 years ago, it was raging,
Right.
and Italy was an epicenter. How did you make it through that era, and how did it influence you creatively and otherwise?
Oh, that's such a great question. So we had just come back from India. We had played Jaipur, a literature festival there called the Jaipur Literature Festival, and it was a fantastic show. And we heard rumblings, and then we got on the plane, came back, and we were supposed to do a longer tour. The first album of the NoteSpeak trilogy had just released, which is NoteSpeak Amore, Tragedia, and Musica. And we had just released it and were, promoting it there and around Europe. And we got back and could not, I think it was like the day after we got back, everything shut down.
Yeah.
And we were disappointed because we wanted to, tour the album and get it out to people, on the one hand. But on the other hand, this sounds horrible to say, but I say it, also thinking of the people who were hurt, by the pandemic and we lost because of the pandemic. But I was happy to be home, in a certain sense, to not, because we just are always traveling and touring and just busy. And it was really great to be home and conceive of the second album, the second NoteSpeak album, and explore this like new way of being, find ways to do these videos in our pajamas, and also figure out tools and ways to do our pre-production for the new album from our homes, so isolated each of us from one another. And what does that look like? And I think we just tried to look at it as an opportunity to learn new skills and new ways of making music.
So let me ask you this. This is the final album in this series. There's so many wonderful creatives that are on here. Talk to me about constructing this. What was your vision?
So it was that's also pretty complex. Marco Cremaschini, who's my writing partner, and I were in we had an artist residency at upstate New York in SUNY Oneonta, which is where we were really lucky to have that place to sort of conceive of the album. And there was a lot of turmoil happening, in the world, like there is now, but it it was something that really affected us. Also, I haven't lived in the States for so long, so going back there and being there for a couple of months was also really interesting experience for me. um, and we wanted something that spoke to unity, just like the second album did as well, um, and a way of thinking about what I mean. There's so many ways so many directions I want to go with this. I don't think that music is the thing that's going to save the world,
Right.
you know, but I do believe that it is especially poetry is a really great way of reaching people, bypassing the intellect and going directly to the heart.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So I feel
Totally.
like it's a great way to communicate big ideas. If it, there's a great Peggy Seeger, Pete Seeger's sister, has this concept of the wedge song, and I love it so much. And her idea is it starts out as a love song, but then that's what people think, it's a love song. But then once I've captured them with the beauty of it, then I'm teaching them, or I'm telling them something, or I'm communicating something else entirely, right?
Yeah.
And I very much like that idea. So yes, so our thing is we don't want to be preachers or tell people what they should think or do. We're just talking about what we see in the world, and talking about ways to come together. We're so divided. We're
Yeah.
so divided, and so yeah, I just had this idea of language being um, one of the things that sort of we can play with and look at, of how do we use language in a way that is productive, right? And I'm thinking about the way that the United States, what that's based on, the blood that's in the ground, and what we've how we've built the United States, right? And using language as one of the sort of metaphors of how we can. There's a great article and essay by Ocean Vuong, this
Right.
wonderful poet, and he says, the words, the America is based on this lexicon of violence, and that's because we have to sort of live with the violence that it's based on, and so we celebrate love and conquest and work through the lexicon of violence. And that really struck me. I started thinking about it. It's like, yeah, you slay, at work, also like the business language, we use a lot of these kinds of words that are really violent.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just thought, yeah, what if we had a whole different way about talking about success,
Yeah.
you know? So that was sort of the impetus for the entire thing, and we thought about that while we were in the artist residency. And then I said, how can we best sort of express also this idea of unity? And it's also, I think, this idea of having so many different genres wrapped in. I mean, from Vernon Reid and the Flamingos, like
Mm-hmm.
doo-wop and like this incredible rock icon, right? To bring, and then also generationally,
Mm-hmm.
of our core band, the youngest, the drummer Manuel, or the drummer Federico Negri, and the saxophone player Manuel Caliumi are in their early 30s, right? And then we go all the way up into the Flamingos, and he unfortunately we just lost Terry Johnson, but he was 80 years old when he sang on that. So from that huge, intergenerational thing, it was all very intentional to bring as many different types of people as we could onto this album, as again an expression of like, look what we can do when
Yeah.
we're united.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's almost like right now it's hard to ignore the elephant in the room in America when you talk about all of these powers that music can give us and how it can transcend all of this division and help us heal and unite. We have devolved into a place in this country that's astonishingly scary.
Yes,
And I find that artists,
terrifying.
yeah, it's terrifying. I find that artists, like in that whole idea of the early revolutionaries. I mean, from Rose's saying no to Bob Dylan letting us know that we have hope. I think we're in that moment right now. And I see what you're doing and what other artists are doing to be a huge part of signifying this current era we're living through of saying, no, it's not okay. None of this is okay.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yes. And we can talk about it. Like we can
yeah,
talk about it. We
it,
don't, it's not, it's, we have to.
yeah, we do.
We have
And
to.
And I think that you putting art out there and hitting nerves that are needed for us to feel connected is of paramount importance. So my question to you is this: how much of living through these very strange times right now is a part of all of the artistry that you put not only into the studio but on the stage for audiences?
It's really important to me to talk about what's happening. And I think I've always been that kind of artist,
Yeah.
right? But it's become, and I think also being a Black American woman, um, informs very much my worldview,
Hmm.
as does being an adoptee. And I came from I came from Boulder, Colorado. I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, with a white mother, a white adoptive mother, Black adoptive father. And at the time that I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, it was 1% ethnic. So
Wow.
that means anything that wasn't white Protestant, right?
Hmm.
So all of that clearly colors the view of what I see. So I've always sort of talked from that viewpoint. Um, but yes, particularly now, it feels quite urgent to sort of confront and look at what's happening in the world. So I guess your question was, how much does that?
Yeah, how much of that is in your mind when you're creating and you're putting out your art to people?
So much.
Yeah.
I consume a lot of news, although I try to do it really mindfully, and I try to listen to all different sort of viewpoints so I don't get sucked into some echo chamber of political bias, and so that I only see one thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, but again, I think also anybody who's sort of comes from a more marginalized community has a much sort of broader view than somebody who doesn't, right? So you're already open to it. You're already ready to do that. So yeah, I really feel like I want to address and talk to what's happening in the world, and but in the best way, and not in a way that's going to be off-putting or you don't want to hear it. I think the album is really easy to listen to, even more so maybe than the first two.
So take me back to your roots. How did art, how did being creative, how did all of these make sense to you and become your career?
Like I said, Boulder, Colorado. I have always loved being on stage. I was in choirs, stuff like that, church choir, and then choirs in the school, and then theater. In fact, I was sort of undecided between theater and music for a while. But my huge and biggest love is words. And I think the reason why is, as I said, I felt I was adopted late. I was rehomed, as it's called, which means I was adopted once. It was a military family. They took me to Malaysia, and then they sent me back to America on my own. I was 7 years old with a note in my pocket. That couldn't happen today,
No.
right? Uh, so and then was adopted in Boulder, and I felt very much sort of an outside of things, but at the same time you can see I'm very gregarious.
Yeah.
I really love people and I want to be around them, so I found a way to make a home for myself, but a lot of times it was uncomfortable, and there was a lot of microaggressions and a lot of racism that I didn't even really have a name for at the time. um, but I did love to read, and so I learned, by all of the classics, all of the luminaries, from Alice Walker to Maya Angelou to James Baldwin to Audre Lorde. Like all of these people showed me something also of what my history could be, because I don't know. I'm in this white family in this white town, and so that was very informative for me. And it was a home. It was a place of peace, right? And I just love a beautiful turn of phrase. I love it when a light bulb goes off when you hear something, and learning what it means. I've always been very captivated by words, which is why I said it was difficult for me to decide between theater and music,
Yeah.
because what the important thing was a really good story, and the power that has to help us.
Yeah.
And I think something that I have learned early, and I still believe fervently, is that a good story is going to build empathy.
Yeah.
It's really easy for us to, when you sort of make people the other, right? And don't think of them as, you think of them as a group. And this is happening so much in the United States right now, right? Where it's easy to sort of denigrate an entire group if you're not thinking of them as mothers, sisters, aunties, cousins. You're not thinking about them making dinner. You're not thinking of the love and joy, and every place that you go there, these things are true. These things are true in humanity. We all share that. So as soon as you can make someone human, I think it really builds empathy. People say, "Oh yeah, gosh, that's the story of that." I don't know, the song Samia, which is from our second album, which is about Samia Yusuf Omar, who was a Somalian athlete,
Yeah.
and she went to the Olympics and came in dead last. She was a runner. But she had such great grit and spirit that the entire stadium was on their feet when she finally made it through. And then she got back to Somalia, and there had been a regime change, and she could not um, practice her, for the next Olympian. She wasn't welcome as a hero, right?
Yeah.
So she had to get out, and to do that, she had to sneak out of the country and take that underground route. And it's all documented with people who traveled with her. And then as she was arriving in Italy, she drowned in sight of land, trying to get to a better place, or to a place where she could just, become the athlete that she wanted to become.
Yeah.
So telling that story, when people hear talk about immigrants here in Italy, telling her story, and what I did is I came home from a gig one night. There was a documentary on the television about her. I sobbed watching it. I contacted. I found that the documentary was based on a book. I contacted the author. Interviewed him. Then I asked him to connect me to the sister, to Samina's sister, so I could get permission to tell her story properly
Yeah.
and sent her the piece to make sure that it resonated and was respectful.
Yeah.
And I think that is an example of what I'm talking about. Telling that story, I think, makes people think twice rather than say, oh, all the immigrants are coming over here to take our jobs,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
to
Yep.
really see her, to paint a picture.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it that from the early goes of any hominid or human, from cave walls to the pages, storytelling has always been that
Yeah.
antidote to hatred and misalignment and all these things that humans concoct that are so fueled by anti-logic.
Power, greed,
Yeah,
hunger for, yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. It's so
It's the
essential.
antidote.
So I'm curious, who either directly or indirectly taught you how to really love being on the stage and to do what you do?
I have a mentor. Her name is Rita Cotter, who was a theater teacher when I was in high school, who I always credit. I talk about her anytime anybody asks. She really impressed upon me the dedication and the work that it takes to make something look effortless.
Yeah, yeah,
you know and then she shared the love of words that I have with me, and so yeah, so she was a huge influence. And then all of the people that I've read that I mentioned before, and there's so many others, and all of the music that I grew up listening to. My adoptive father's father was a jazz drummer,
okay.
and we had jazz in the house all the time, and it's Ella and it's Billy and it's all of them. And then on my adoptive mother's side, she loved folk music, so it was James Taylor, Joni Mitchell, Joan Baez. So all of that singing in the family, and then the that sort of transformative feeling when you're singing in a group and it sounds good and it feels good and you love that song. That was the first thing. And then being able to get on a stage. And I really remember some of the first solos that I had when I was, 10 years old, 12 years old, and on a stage, and actually feeling that flux of energy between the stage and the audience
Yeah,
was amazing to me. It was like, wow,
yeah,
I can be a part of helping to like create this feeling. It's not just the song. I can also participate in that.
yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, it certainly does. And I'm curious, after this long road that you've been on, of everything that you've done, accomplished, and become, what are you the proudest of?
Uh, I guess myself as a writer.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's funny when, because I do sing as well, and on these last three albums I sing a little bit, but it's mostly recitation of my poetry, right?
yeah,
And the band that I had before this, and all the bands that I had before this, I was always singing and writing songs but singing them. And I was always like, oh yeah, I'm an okay singer, very critical of myself, not really proud of it, but I've always said, but I can write. And that feels true, and like the best part of what I can do.
so I'm going to take this one step further. Everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, fans, everyone that's on the bandstand with you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh gosh, that's a really difficult question. Who do I think I am? I don't know. I think I'm an empath, and I am uh, an introverted extrovert. You know what I mean?
Oh
I,
yeah,
like
I
I said,
dig it.
I'm very gregarious, you can see, but really my happy place and where I feel the best is when I'm alone in this room in my study and I'm writing and I'm finding something ephemeral that's just there
Mhm.
and capturing it. And those are the moments that I feel the most alive. I also feel very much that I am a cog in the machine of humanity. You know what I mean? I feel also this that I'm tiny, and so that my other favorite place to be is in nature. And the majesty of nature, and the realization that I'm just a tiny, tiny little piece
Yeah,
of something. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I don't I love it when I'm able to let go of ego and just be like the conduit.
yeah.
So yeah, so it's hard to say how my perception of myself is. I don't know. I don't know if that
You did it.
answers
You
your
did great. No, that's exactly
question.
what I was looking for. And I'm curious, what do you love the most about living in Italy, and what do you miss about America?
Ah, so I've lived all over the world. I left New York. I went to and I lived in France for a while, and I lived in the Caribbean in Saint Martin, and then I lived in Amsterdam and Holland. I lived in Central America and Italy. So like I like to travel. I like to see a lot of different places, and I like to be there long enough to actually see what the place is like, not as a
Yeah,
tourist. You know what I
yep,
mean?
absolutely.
Learn the language because
Uh-huh.
that's the way to really feel a part of wherever it is that you are.
Yeah.
So I love French and I love Italian. I love the musicality of the languages, though I don't write in them. And I love the food here,
Oh
clearly.
yeah.
I love the history, although that's problematic, like it is everywhere. But I love the idea here in Italy that the beauty that's everywhere, like the beauty of the table, like
Yeah.
everything that's on the table, the plates and not just the food, but like all of it. And then the beauty of just, you go into a tiny little village and the grandmother has this beautiful, hand knit sweater and when she gets dressed up, she's got the perfect shoes. And it's not, it's the fashion, but it's not just the fashion. It's like a well produced product.
Yeah.
I like this idea of living well,
Yeah.
and living with beauty and surrounding yourself with beauty. So I love that about Italy. What I miss most about being in America is the shorthand. Like I can speak to an American, like we can get each other
Uh-huh.
a lot quicker maybe than I can. I miss that. I realize it when I'm speaking to somebody who's an American.
Yeah.
Um, what else do I miss about America? I loved living in the and in New York but New York feels like separate
Yeah.
from America in a
Uh-huh.
way, you
Yeah.
know.
I get that.
So yeah, I guess I miss that. The biggest thing is that was my countrymen and women.
Yeah.
Is what I miss the most about living in the States.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. If anyone wants to get a copy of NoteSpeak, the best way to do that that would benefit you and everyone.
Bandcamp,
Okay, Bandcamp. Wanted to make
Bandcamp,
sure.
or there's also a new place that's called Even,
Okay.
new platform. That's another place. Either one of those would be
Okay.
great. Yeah.
And then if anybody wants to catch you on stage, any of the other wonderful work that you're doing, where's the best place for them to go?
Go to my website, lisamariesimmons.com,
Okay.
and you can
Wonderful.
find all the things there.
Absolutely.
Or if you
What?
go to my Instagram profile and underneath in the bio, there's my link tree, which
Okay.
has all of my writing as well for my essays and all that stuff as
Okay.
well that I do. And you can get everything.
I will put that link in the show notes. That would make the most sense. Lisa, this has been absolutely wonderful. I'm so glad that we arced in and had
You
this
are
moment.
incredibly kind, Joe. I mean, it was such a pleasure. I'm so happy to be with you. Thank you
Yes,
for inviting me and for your thoughtful questions and for
absolutely.
listening and looking at my work. I really appreciate that.
It's been an honor. Absolutely.